Our screens may be all different sizes this year, but our films will have the same sized impact. They'll shake you, move you, and refuse to leave you. Mark our words. Groundbreaking stories are very much to be continued.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our 2020 Toronto International Film Festival review of Spring Blossom. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week on the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a streaming platform near you, except for this week, where we are reviewing a few select films that we were able to catch at this year's Toronto International Film Festival. So yeah, these are going to be a little bit shorter than our normal reviews, which is fine because you guys won't be able to see these films if you are listening, and we're going to maybe try not to go too deep into them because we don't want to spoil things that could be coming out in the future. But yeah, anything to say, Stephen, before we get started in this episode?
No, not much. Except, I guess, to say that I was going to go to Cannes this year, and there were a few Cannes did a weird thing this year where rather than just announce their 21 or whatever official selection, they announced a bunch of titles and then wouldn't tell what category they were, which is nice of them, I guess. It was just a way to elevate more films. They kind of were rather than tell you what got in, here's a list of 60 things. And Spring Blossom was one of those things. So this is something that there was a chance I would have been seeing in France moments before I died of the coronavirus.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're going to get started with this episode as usual. No trailer for these, so I'm just going to give you a brief description. It is about a young 16-year-old girl who one day while walking around, this older gentleman catches her eye, and it's sort of about her experience thinking about this new infatuation and maybe acting on it. Stephen, what did you think of Spring Blossom?
So I feel like I have a role to fill here on the podcast as the guy who would go to bat for this movie. But unfortunately, I cannot be that guy in this instance. Try as I must. I think I'm man enough to admit that I'm just not French enough for certain movies. So I mean, this movie has some stuff to recommend it. It is written, directed, and starring Suzanne Lindon. So it's an extremely young person wrote and directed this film. And so she is trying to share her experience as a young person growing up in France, how she sees the world. And I'm a fan of that idea. I think it's cool that somebody made a personal story like that. I just feel like the acting is very, very flat in this movie, at least to me. I feel like I don't know much about what the character of Suzanne is, how she feels. I certainly don't know anything about Raphael, the love interest, why he would want to talk to her or what they have in common.
Because Stephen, he's been doing the same play for untold amount of days, and he just wants something new and fresh. Yeah. And what's newer and fresher than a 16-year-old girl?
Amen, brother. All right.
That was a joke for anybody listening.
I know. but yeah, it's the kind of thing where I feel like it's trying to be very impressionistic, and it's all about here's how love feels for her, here's how infatuation feels, and here's these two people meeting each other and just sitting and having kind of terse conversations and going about their life. But it feels so brief, it's unfinished. I didn't feel like I got a narrative for either of them. And while there were a few touches that I liked, there's a scene of them listening to something in headphones that I enjoyed, and there's a scene at a adult party. Adult party is a weird way to say it, but there's multiple parties in this movie, and this is one that adults are at.
Steven, she's not old enough to get into adult parties.
I know. there's a scene where she's having a conversation with like a set dressing person that I thought was fairly funny. But in general, this movie, it just like passed right through me. I don't know. When it ended, I was like, okay, I guess that's the ending. Yeah, didn't do it for me. Wasn't a big fan.
Yeah, I think maybe I was still riding the high off the previous film, but up until the moment, the second line of dialogue, the first time she talks to the guy, up until that moment, I was really vibing on this film. I mean, it makes sense because it's written, directed, and stars a person who this is the vantage point that it's coming from. But I think the sort of everything that's done from afar, like her not fitting in with her classmates, her kind of not fitting in at home, her like view of the world is like everything is exciting and interesting, and the way she reacts to seeing different things in her environment, like the first time that she sees the motorcycle that's like broken down, I guess, and she like runs home and she's like, Dad, how long does it take to fix a motorcycle? And like all of that wide-eyed, like complete innocence view of the world, I thought was extremely compelling, and I was very, very interested in like, you know, her sort of wanting to eat toast with jam just because she saw this man eating toast with jam. All of that, totally cool with. Everything's good. As soon as they talk, his very first question is, how old are you? And he's like 16. He's like, well, I'm 35 or whatever it was. And then and then there's like, they don't bring it up again. I'm like, okay, I guess that's just French culture. I don't. I'm like, all right, cool. And everything from then on, their interactions together, there's no there. Like, there's no, this isn't a story, like, this isn't a Call Me By Your Name where right. You understand where both people are and why they are drawn into this relationship. It's just two people who are bored and decide to start drinking lemonade and grenadine together, and then like things go on. So this film kind of lost me after their first conversation, because I was like, oh, okay, you were doing something that was really like interesting. Like you were showing me a particular viewpoint, and I was understanding how she felt in all those moments. And then everything after that just seemed kind of strange to me. And then I know recently I've complained a lot about dance numbers. I was like, I liked the way the dance numbers came about in this film.
It's 500 Days of Summer.
Well, okay, so the dance number at the table, it's emotionally metaphorical, right? Mm-hmm. The dance number on the stage, is that supposed to actually, like, they're not dancing,
I assumed
right?
It was just metaphorical. Yeah.
But I mean, it's metaphorical of like something else having happened, right?
Probably. Yeah. I can't say for sure, but I read it that way.
Yeah, so it's like once we get to, like, the first time they dance, it's in a public setting, so no shenaniganry is happening. And then once there's like a dance later on, it starts to feel kind of like weird. And then the film sort of just like, the character has a revelation that's not brought on by anything that I can discern. I even, like, I was watching, and then there's a scene where she talks to her mother, and I was like, wait, did I miss something? And I rewound, and I went back to the point where she talks about, like, I have a new beauty mark. And then I was like, okay, that doesn't apply. So I went to the scene ahead of that. And I was like, no, okay, I remember that. And I started bouncing around trying to, like, is there something I missed, or is there something strange that's happening? And then the film ended, and I was kind of just left, not off put, but kind of just like, I don't know what this film was trying to do. And it kind of just left me not super happy by the end of it.
Yeah, and like, I'm sometimes okay with a movie ending in a way that puzzles me. It's like, okay, let me piece that together. Let me think about what I just watched. But I like you said, I didn't really feel like, maybe you didn't say this, I felt like there wasn't really a there. Like I felt like there wasn't. Okay. I felt like there wasn't a lot holding it together, and I get that it's it's like an exploration of how it feels to fall in love with an older man, which, hey, France is France. I don't know. I'm glad that at least on screen things are chaste in this movie, which made it easier for me to not be too bothered by the age situation. But yeah, it just kind of fizzled out. Like I like her, like you said at the beginning when it's establishing how her life feels and like her not really fitting in with her friends. Like I like the innocence and like the faces she makes and the way that she reacts to things. It feels like you wouldn't ever have written it that way. Like it feels very authentic for obvious reasons. And I like that. But then as the movie goes on, it isn't that it loses that authenticity. It's just kind of like there's Suzanne being just herself, you know, a 16-year-old girl, and then there's ostensibly a romance happening, and like there's nothing holding it together. I don't know. It feels very incomplete. Like 30 minutes got ripped out of the middle of this movie that would be where the actual like dramatic tension happens. So I'll say maybe I just didn't get it. I don't know, but I didn't get it.
Yeah, I think the problem is that if they drew out the dancing around things, if they kind of like just kept encountering each other and maybe she was causing it to happen and he was sort of oblivious to it and he was just sort of, you know, like he liked that this young girl was like paying attention to him, but he wasn't actually whatever he was in this movie, then that would be different. If it kept drawing it until a point where they meet at a party or something, right? Like then it could be like there's a tension that's building, but I feel like they immediately just start hanging out all the time, but there's no conversation that happens. He just says like, oh, I do a play, and she's like, oh, our play's cool, and he's like, I mean, I do the play a lot, and she's like, oh, I could maybe see the play. I tried to see the play, but I can't because I'm 16 and I don't have a way to see the play by myself. And like, there's never there. I don't know. It seems like there's never conversations, but the moments of just her in her own head, I feel what she's thinking in those moments. Like there's that scene where she like takes the other cup to drink from. Like those moments feel authentic and feel like warm, right? And the other stuff just feels kind of cold and dead. And because there's the whole everything sitting over it, you kind of just go like, I don't know about this. And the fact that no one else thinks it's weird, like they're always in public places and everybody's like, oh yeah, cool, that one girl's here. Like it just, I don't understand. So yeah.
Well, I mean, the world is cold and dead. It's all winter except for this one spring blossom. And that's what the name means. We figured it out.
Yeah, I feel like that name is extremely creepy if you tell the film from the other point of view.
Yeah.
But anyways, Stephen, what do you say we get to our verdicts for this film?
Sure.
If you're going to give this a must-see, a recommend with a caveat, a wait for rental, a pass with a caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
I'm going pass with a caveat. I feel like this movie lost me pretty quickly. I didn't feel like there was a lot to recommend it, but I will happily admit there may be cultural things or like intentions that this movie had that just went over my head. And the caveat is like it looks and feels like a real movie, and it's cool that someone she is currently 20, which means she must have been like 17 or something when she was writing and starting to make this movie. And that is wild that someone that young made a movie that maybe got into Cannes and certainly got into TIFF. So like, good on you, you know, keep making movies. Clearly she's got a vision and a point of view. But this one just didn't do it for me.
Yeah. Because she's so intimately tied to the project, I feel bad just shitting on the movie.
She's not going to listen to this.
I know she's not. Well, I mean, you don't know. I mean, there's probably not going to be a lot of reviews of it.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just like piling on unintentionally.
Nobody at reply her when we post this episode.
But yeah, I'm going to give it a must avoid. I think that Like if I think the beginning of the film is really great, and I was really vibing with it, but it just sort of once the encounter actually takes place, I feel like the film doesn't have anything to share anymore, and I think the characters' personal revelations don't. They're not explained enough, and like the person she's revealing them to doesn't even respond to it. The credits just roll. So it's kind of like I really felt it's hard for me to recommend this film for a myriad of reasons.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a review of Spring Blossom. Stephen Miller.
We did it.
If people want to find you throughout the week, Stephen, where can they do that?
People can find me at twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can just add all the hate at me over there. You can head over to thespoilerwarning.com to find a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from that little jingle, so hopefully you're enjoying that once again. And yeah, we have more episodes to review that hopefully we will like more than this one. Bye.
This is Canadian content, and it's time we take credit for it. Starting now.